and welcome everybody back to the Inside Our Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about the game that had happened on Saturday. El Trafico, a 4-2 win, another comeback for the ages for the LA Galaxy in this derby. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about our thoughts, our opinions about this game, what it means for the Galaxy, what it means going forward, going into the playoffs. And honestly, just an amazing game overall. Not the best in terms of the first half. Go down 2-0. I'm not going to lie. Probably thought we weren't going to come back, but we ended up coming back. An amazing second half. Putting up 4 goals against LAFC. Nothing better. Worthy of wearing the cowboy hat, of course. And obviously, we're going to talk about that, of course. We're going to talk about some Galaxy news, Ventura County updates, and of course, our previews this week, one against Portland and the other against Vancouver. Portland away, Vancouver at home at Dignity Health Sports Park, of course. And so, obviously it's going to be a good episode to talk about. Good moods, good vibes here in terms of what happened on Saturday. But of course, obviously we'll get into it. Of course, I would say with me as always is LA Galaxy Central. Once again, Alex is not here today. Of course, we're still trying to figure out the scheduling. Talked to him, asked him if he wanted to come on today. Of course, didn't have the scheduling, the time to do it. But we did talk about it and said maybe possibly after these next 2 games that we have, he'll be on. So we're obviously going to figure it out. We're going to figure out, how to get him back on here. I know he's a fan favorite for some of you guys, of course, being with the show. And of course, it is kind of weird not to have my partner in crime here for the podcast. And obviously I wish him the best of luck still at school and things like that. Hopefully everything's going good with him, but still though, this is going to be another episode with me only, of course, so it'll be most of my thoughts, my opinions about this game and just everything going into this week. So of course, but hopefully you guys enjoy this one, another one with me, but glad you're all here. Hopefully y'all had a great weekend. Of course, after this win, the weekend probably changed for everybody and everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was in a good mood after this game, of course. And, hopefully everybody is doing well in terms of the weekend and things like that. Recording this one a little bit early because we do have a Wednesday game, of course. So we got to talk about that later on in this episode. But of course, before we get into those previews, obviously, we got to talk about what happened Saturday because, boy, what a performance in the second half. I don't want to say complete performance, but because of what happened in the first half. But what a performance in the second half. What a result that we needed in this game. We went into this game. I said, I didn't make an episode leading into this week, which apologies for that, obviously, again, with scheduling, stuff like that. But I did talk about it a little bit in the last episode after the St. Louis game. I said it going into this game, this was a must-win game. It needed to be a game where the Galaxy just needed to bounce back in a game where it could define where we place in the Western Conference. I even said going into this game, it could be, whoever wins this game could be, the team that leads the Western Conference and, gets the number 1 seed going into the playoffs. And of course, a lot was at stake for this one for the Galaxy, obviously. Had some advantages going into this game, had some disadvantages going into this game. Of course, being at home, being in front of your fans, being undefeated at home was an advantage. Not losing back-to-back games, obviously, haven't had that in this season, was also sort of an advantage going into that. But there was also disadvantages. Obviously, LAFC have had our number over the past year. We haven't beaten them since the first Rose Bowl game, right? The one last year, so it had been a while since we beat LAFC. So there was obviously some disadvantages going into this one. And even once the game started and once they scored first, which obviously, let's get into that, I guess. LAFC, 3 minutes in, already scored a goal. Not the best way you want to start a game for the LA Galaxy. Of course, this was a game where obviously you got to set the tone. You got to set the tone, make sure, go in with the right mindset going into this game. And of course, for the Galaxy, you were at home. They needed to set the right tone at home, and they didn't do that in the first half. Of course, 3 minutes in, Bogus gets the first goal off a counterattack, in which, again, both goals were off a counterattack. Bogus gets it going very early on. Then you had Denny Bouanga also scoring the second goal within, I believe, is around the 15th minute. So Yeah, I mean, obviously within the first 20 minutes, you get 2 goals scored on you, and that's not what you want. We said it on this show before. You don't want to get scored on early in this game, and unfortunately, that's what happened to the Galaxy because that's just not a good way to go out in a game or to start a game, to say the least. And I was unfortunate that that's how it started. Not gonna lie, was pretty depressing, was pretty upset, disappointed. And I'm not gonna lie, with the way the Galaxy were playing in the first half, I did not have that much hope. And I think a lot of Galaxy fans maybe probably melded in after that second goal because, yeah, I mean, LAFC easily scored those 2 goals very early on. The Galaxy just weren't necessarily getting it done in the first half. I mean, they had the opportunities, they were slowly getting into the game. Um, and we had the opportunities, but we weren't just being clinical. Obviously, Gabriel Peck had a lot of those in this game. Didn't necessarily have the finish in those. I mean, I think Diego Fagundes got one and had a chance and didn't get the finish on that one. I know Ricky Puig tried to get a shot off early in the game, but it was just like we had the opportunities. We were getting there. We were slowly building up into the game, but we weren't finishing. And I think that was just kind of like where people were saying, especially me, I was just like, well, I mean, we're getting there, but we're not necessarily finishing it, and we need to finish those. Um, and to me, it was just more like, well, like I don't know if we had the hope. Like it just looked like the Galaxy just weren't getting there. LAFC were sort of dissecting us in this game. Could have had 3 goals in this game if it wasn't for Giroud hitting the post and then McCarthy getting the save. Which honestly, I don't want to say that's what turned the tide, but honestly, it kind of kept you in the game in a sense. I believe that was in like the 38th minute when that happened, and honestly, that moment kind of kept you in the game in a sense. But honestly, just offensively, we just weren't finishing. The midfield wasn't playing that good. I mean, Edwin Cerrillo in the first half, which by the way, we'll talk about him and his involvement in the second half, because obviously there was a couple, of players in that game who didn't have, necessarily the best first halves, but definitely turned it around in the second. Him being one of them, but in the first half, he wasn't necessarily good. The midfield was just getting, dominated in there. Defensively, we weren't that great either. I kind of felt like that we let those goals in easily. Maybe we could have done a better job, especially in the second goal. When you look at McCarthy getting beat off his, near post, like that should not happen, but it happened. First goal, obviously, we probably could have done better in that one, but still, though, it just didn't seem like the cards were in our favor. I think a lot of people were probably thinking, well, we're gonna get swept on here. We're going to get swept by LAFC in 2024. This is not how you want to do it. And yeah, I mean, honestly, just the first half just was not there for everybody. And I think, it was maybe the fact that maybe we didn't go with the right mindset going into that game. Maybe we were underestimating a little bit the LAFC team, or maybe they just felt, I don't know, maybe they were just being outplayed by LAFC. But even then, I don't know if that was necessarily the case, because I think the Galaxy still were involved, were in the game. It's just that they weren't getting the right things done. And I think that was the problem with the first half, especially, is that we were getting the opportunities, we weren't finishing them, and that was the problem. But even then, like, and not to say that was the only problem. Obviously, there was a lot of things that had a problem in that first half, but still, though, very demoralizing. I think that's a half where, especially in a rivalry game, you're going to feel a bit demoralized. But that's kind of where this Galaxy team thrives off, in a sense. Because when you look at the Galaxy, and especially that second half, which again I'll go into right now, but if you look at the second half and just in general this season, I feel like the Galaxy have done a lot this season. Yeah, they've had some pretty disappointing losses. Yeah, they've had some disappointing moments in this season, but there's been a lot of scenarios in this Galaxy season where you look at it and say, well, they've been thriving and they've been doing well, and they've been, they have the right mindset. It just hasn't been this thing where the Galaxy, where they just give up easily. And in a sense, that's kind of how you saw in this game. The Galaxy didn't give up in this game. They've had the resilience to go in this game. Now, will I tell you that I expected them to go in there and score 4 goals in the second half? Hell no. I don't think anybody really expected them to do what they did in the second half. and that was to score 4 goals and do a massive comeback in this game. Like maybe I expected, okay, maybe we can get a goal in here, maybe we can tie the game up at least. And although a tie would have been pretty disappointing, you still get a point. But still, though, it's like I didn't necessarily expect them to come back that great. Um, and again, when you look at the what happened, that Giroud opportunity, it was just like, whoa, like if that opportunity did not happen, or if that was the third goal for LAFC in the first half, again, I don't know if we come back. Um, and that's just something that you guys have. That's just something where it's just like, whoa, if that little moment would have been there for them, this probably would have been a different game. But still, though, it keeps us 2-0. And you know what they say about 2-0? It's just the fact that 2-0 could be a very dangerous lead, and maybe LAFC kind of downplayed on that 2-0. Maybe they felt like they had it. I don't know if necessarily that was the case. I think the Galaxy just woke up in the second half. Which, by the way, let's talk about the second half, because obviously I'm just talking about the first half a little bit. But the second half, again, we score early, kind of early on in the second half. I believe our first goal was in the 53rd minute. First one by Dejan Jovic, with, by the way, great goal to score for Dejan. For that one, for his first start of the season, or not first start of the season, first start since his injury, coming back from injury. Dejan kicks it off for us to set the comeback, and boy, what a goal that was. And I think once he scored that goal, obviously for me, it was just like, whoa, that was kind of a little bit, I don't want to say vintage Dejan, but it kind of felt like a goal that Dejan would have scored in 2021, 2022, which is something we haven't really seen from Dejan this season, although he's been producing a lot. That was a goal where it was like, okay, like that's kind of the killer Dejan we've been waiting to see. And then that first goal obviously kicks it off. You're like, all right, you have a little bit of hope in this game. Let's see what happens. Maybe we can tie it early on, or maybe sometime later in the game. And then just a few minutes later, the surreal goal happens, and that's where it's just kind of like, whoa, that was a goal. Like, I mean, again, when in the first half for Cerrillo, and I think a lot of people had probably had the same opinion, where it's just like Cerrillo was not having a good game. It wasn't good for him. And honestly, I was probably going to come onto this show probably talking bad about him, or not necessarily bad about him, but just more about what he did in the first half, and maybe if it was the same thing in the second half, just a negative outlook on Cerrillo. But then when you see the goal, and it wasn't just this goal, right? I think he had a much better second half, for the game. But when you see that goal to get the tying goal, boy, I mean, Cerrillo just absolutely just, wow, what a goal for him. And just honestly, for LAFC, I think that was kind of the demoralizing part for them, knowing that we came back, and that was the second goal. It was just like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it was just an amazing goal. I jumped out of my seat. I wasn't in the game actually, but I ended up watching it at my cousin's house with other LAFC fans in attendance. So you could tell it was a little bit of a, in the first half they were, talking their smack a little bit, and then once the second half happens, everybody was quiet there. Which, by the way, Saturday, a lot of sports happening. You had obviously El Trafico, you had Liga MX with El Clásico, you had UFC, you had boxing, you had college football, like a bunch of sports on Saturday. So it was a good Saturday for whoever was rooting for what sport and for what team. But anyways, that's besides the point. El Trafico, though, still, once that second goal happens for Cerrillo, that's when the tide really turns, and then the Galaxy have so much time to really go get the win. And it was demoralizing for LAFC in a sense. LAFC were not playing the way that they were in the first half. Galaxy playing a lot more tight defensively, really limiting those counterattacks that they had in the first half. Again, is just sort of like they woke up, and these little adjustments that we made in the second half, and especially defensively, that's what really changed the tide. And again, those simple changes and those simple adjustments that you need to make is what could make or break a game. And so in this instance, it made such a big difference. And another thing too, as well, I think something that, in the first half that they weren't really doing was they weren't really getting in the spaces that they needed to be, offensively. And I think in the second half, and especially when you look at all the goals that happened, the Galaxy found spaces to get in there. and they were very much more clinical in this second half. But it's just something that they did so many little things that made it a big difference. But yeah, the Cerrillo goal happens again. Just an amazing goal by Cerrillo. Tres dedos too, like the three fingers and just in the top bins. Couldn't be a much better goal to tie a game. And that wasn't even the only banger, obviously. But still, though, to really just tie the game like that, I don't want to. I know this might be a little bit of a bit of a big take, or maybe of a crazy take. I don't want to say. Obviously, you can't compare the Zlatan goal that happened in the first El Tráfico. Nothing will beat that in that moment. But when you see Cerrillo make a goal like that in the El Tráfico in a game to tie it up, it kind of gave you a little bit, maybe just me, but it's just a little bit of the same vibes in a sense, that because when Zlatan made that goal, that gave so much hope for us Galaxy fans that day. And I think once Cerrillo scored that second goal, I think gave the whole stadium exploded. The whole stadium exploded and everybody was back into the game. And I think that just made such a big difference for that goal and to really turn the tides. But again, that happens. Then you get Dejan scoring the third goal with Ricky getting the sort of the assist on that one. I know it looked like he gets a shot, but Joveljic in the right spot manages to just put his foot out, redirects into the goal. Again, a great third goal. And then in the fourth goal, again in the 85th minute to close it out, Ricky Puig with a banger as well. Marco Reus gets the assist for that one, as for that goal as well. And again, that's where. And then once you get that fourth goal, checkmate, in a sense, right? So, yeah, I mean, honestly, just a great way for them to come back. It was really night and day in terms of the performances in both halves. And again, I don't think everybody maybe had the faith going in the second half to win that game. Maybe they would have come back for at least a tie, but 4 goals in one half is just insane to come back in that matter and against your rivals. And I don't think anybody expected that. I certainly did not expect that. I talked to Alex. I was like, did you even expect this to happen? And even he agreed. Like, I don't think, he expected it either. And so, for sure, though, it was just one of those days where just it kind of, gives you a little hope for the Galaxy going into the rest of the season. But again, they did the job that they needed to do. Maybe it wasn't pretty in the first half, wasn't pretty at the start of it, but they got the job done. And I know a lot of people, again, when we look back at the St. Louis loss, everybody was like, oh, well, this is a big problem now going into LAFC, blah, blah, blah. Maybe the Galaxy, this is where they fall and crumble, maybe, or a lot of emotion, a lot of different takes about that game. But I was, going into this game, I was like, all right, listen, like we got to put St. Louis behind us. Now we focus on this game because this game is going to be much bigger than St. Louis. And again, it was like the St. Louis game after that wasn't a concern after the Galaxy game, right? I said that last episode. I was like, it wasn't going to be a concern after that game, but if we lost this game, this is where we got to be more concerned. And not because we lose to LAFC, because that's the least of it, but it's the fact of where we are in the positioning in the table. They come up closer. They have 2 games left on them, or 2 games on hand, excuse me. And that's where kind of just like, that would have been more of a concern. And now after this game, now you get the 3 points. You're 8 points ahead, I believe, against LAFC now. Yes, they have 2 games on hand, but even if they win those games, they're still going to be behind you. And that's a big difference, right? But also still, though, Galaxy, which again, we'll go into the previews for Portland and for Vancouver, but, obviously there's still more work to be done for the Galaxy to keep that number 1 spot. But still, though, I think after this game, you have to look at it and say, well, mentally, this is a big deal for the Galaxy. Now they're going to feel like now going into the final parts of the season and going into the playoffs, it's going to give them more motivation. And again, this was kind of like, I don't want to say the final piece for the Galaxy this season, but obviously we've beaten RSL, we've beaten Vancouver, we've beaten Portland, we've beaten Colorado, I believe, as well. We've beaten some teams that are already in spots for the playoffs, who we might see in the playoffs. But the only one that was left was LAFC. And they had our number, in the beginning of the year and in the Rose Bowl game and even before that. And we just haven't beaten LAFC at that point. And that's where, this game would let you know more. If we beat LAFC, not only will that help us during the rest of the season, but it gives the boys more confidence in going into the playoffs. Because that was kind of the final piece for the I guess for the season. So that's why it would have been much more of a concern if we lost against LAFC. They would have swept us, and again, I don't know how much confidence the team would have after that. But still, though, it is something that it was a must win. It was a must win for both teams. It was a must win for LAFC because if they would have won this game, obviously that gives them more motivation, knowing that they're closer to the Galaxy. They would have had the 2 games on hand, and that just they were they were there for the taking, right? And so like that puts them in a much better position. So for this game, for both fan bases, for both sides, it had to be a game where you needed to win. And again, I think this game kind of could lead to the point of who takes the top spot in the Western Conference. Obviously, the Galaxy still got to play their games. They still got to win games. They still got to get the points. They still got to get results. No matter what, they still got to keep it going. It's not just this was it, because mathematically that's not the case, right? So, but I think mentally and for the side of the team, it could lead to that. That's why I said going into this game, this game can do you wonders if you win. But obviously, we got to see that. We got to see that against Portland. We got to see that against Vancouver, which we'll get into later. But yeah, though, a comeback for the ages. Another comeback. I mean, again, you have the first El Trafico. You had that one comeback also in that first year of the rivalry where it was 2-2 or 3-3. In that game in BMO. I think that was another comeback. I think we had one in 2021. I think that's when Dejan played in that one, his first El Trafico. I think that was also another comeback as well. So, but still though, another comeback in this rivalry, and boy, was the Galaxy fans letting those LAFC fans have it, right? Like I think everybody was bantering after that, which Job was also bantering with like my family and stuff, because like I said, when I went to go watch this game, went to a cousin's house, most of them were LAFC fans. One of my cousins actually was at the game, who was an LAFC fan and was gonna call me when they won, and I had to call them. So it's all friendly banter with the family. Which, by the way, shout out to my cousin actually for buying me the LA kit. Obviously I have the LA kit back there. With Insider Galaxy, and everything like that. That was actually won by a giveaway. I don't think I ever told the story. Yeah, I won that off a giveaway. They ended up putting the Insider Galaxy, which shout out to LA Galaxy for that jersey. Didn't realize how much of a slim fit that jersey was. So, and me being a fluffy guy, I haven't worn that jersey. And I told myself like, oh, I'll probably buy another one where it's a little bit bigger. My cousin ended up getting me this one, so shout out to him, and shout out to Alan for getting me this jersey, even though he's an LAFC fan and things like that. No matter the rivalry, we're still family, and I know a lot of people are probably the same way with Galaxy fans. They probably got family members and friends who are, LAFC fans and things like that. But at the end of the day, we won, so we got to talk about that, right? So I got to banter any way we can, but yeah, I mean, obviously, great comeback win for the G's. But let's talk about the players actually in this game, which, obviously there was a lot of players in the positions as well, how they did. Which I guess you can say the same thing for everybody, which was obviously a disappointing first half, and they woke up in the second half. But let's start off first with the defense. Your starting defense, you had John McCarthy, you had Mickey Imane, you had Yoshida, you had Jalen Neal, and you had John Nelson in this game. No Julian Aude yet. Still wondering what is up with him. Obviously, he's been injured for a while, and what he's, we're gonna need him back on the team at some point. But still though, John Nelson gets a start, which he's been on the starting lineup for a while now. So at this point, he's been a starter. But yeah, you have that was your starting defense, and once again, like I said in the beginning, was not a good first half for the defense. Could have done better in those goals. Obviously, counterattacks played effect in that one. Probably wasn't set right, wasn't positioned right. Jalen Neal got cooked a couple times. Not even just a couple times. He got cooked in the first half at good points in this game. And yeah, obviously you have the second goal. McCarthy could have done better with his positioning. And again, it was just not a good day for the first half, or not a good first half for the defense. And honestly, it was just, yeah, I mean, obviously you weren't happy with the defensive performance. LAFC were easily getting into our side of the field. rather than us. We were playing a little too wide, I believe, giving them too much space to get in those opportunities. And yeah, I mean, obviously the defense in the first half was not good. Um, but then the second half was a lot better. And I mentioned this, earlier before. Um, the defense played a lot more tighter. It allowed less space for LAFC to get down the field and counterattack easily. It allowed, our fullbacks, especially Mickey and Mane, to still be a part of the offense with being a little tighter. And yeah, it was just the small adjustments that we needed. And honestly, it was, again, night and day for the team, night and day for the defense. And Jalen Neal, I mean, obviously, again, I think there's two players in this game where they had really bad first halves, but then really picked it up in the second half. Jalen Neal being one of them. Not a good first half by him, and then in the second half, being so much better, being, obviously again being more tighter, working together as the defense, and just had a much better second half, and also having that feistiness and fieriness in him. In that game, obviously got in Bouanga's face a couple times, and then that was good. And also Serio got, backed them up in that one, which was another player who had a night and day performance in that one. And yeah, I mean, obviously it was just, again, great performance by Jalen Neal. Obviously, John McCarthy was a lot better, made some more saves. Again, it's just the night and day, and just the performance for the defense, and really just the way that they played the way that they were just much tighter in the second half, the way that they were limiting LAFC to really play the way that they wanted to play was just, again, it was good. It was a good switch. It was good tactics, from Greg and for everybody on the coaching staff and things like that, right? So it's just like they knew that they needed to make the adjustments, and they did it. So again, it's the small adjustments that they needed to do, and it went a long way for the defense. So obviously, much better performance for the defense in that sense. And yeah, I mean, honestly, my standout in that defense was probably, Jalen Neal, the way he just turned it around, in that second half. So yeah, obviously shout out to him, shout out to Jalen Neal, shout out to everybody on the defense, obviously, for being, for doing a heck of a job in the second half. Again, they shut it down. They had a shutout second half and scored 4 goals. So they clearly did something right? So yeah, obviously shout out to the defense for that one. Let's talk about the midfield now. Midfield was interesting because I think a lot of people were kind of confused with the fact that Greg went in with Edwin Cerrillo, Marco Royce, and Ricky Puig in this game, which, I mean, it was very interesting because when I saw that on the lineup, I was like, whoa. Why aren't we putting in Mark Delgado here? Mark Delgado obviously has done a great job this season, has been more than solid for us this season. Again, that does the little things right for the Galaxy, covers a lot of space, is really the engine of that midfield, and you take out the engine. So I thought that was a very interesting move here, to put in Marco Royce, to put in Ricky Puig and Edwin Cerrillo. And again, in terms of, the positioning, first half was not good for the midfield. Obviously, Edwin Cerrillo had a really rough first half, and really more than just rough. For Edwin, and then also Marco Royce just wasn't getting into it. Ricky Puig was trying to make plays but couldn't, but LAFC were neutralizing him pretty well in that first half. And I think just in general, we were, the midfield really wasn't present within those first 2 goals, because obviously, when we talk about the defense, sometimes you also got to look at the midfield. Whenever they score goals, the midfield wasn't really there for those goals and to really try to stop LAFC getting into those spaces, although they were playing out wide, I guess, in those first 2 goals. So it's like, I guess not much of the midfield could do that. But I guess in a sense, what I'm trying to say is that there wasn't much of a defensive presence in the midfield in the first half. And I think that's kind of what messed us up. I think that we were trying to focus too much on the offense, and that's why you put Marco Royce in there. And I guess in a sense, for these games, you got to go offensively. You got to go try to get the first goal, try to, set the tone. And I think that's what Greg was probably trying to do in this game. But clearly in the first half, it didn't really work because, LAFC got those first 2 goals. So I guess it made sense to try to create an offensive presence for the game, and try to get those goals early and try to get Ricky Puig in early, but clearly didn't work in the first half. But in the second half, that's where it really clicked in, right? Everybody in the midfield contributed. Obviously, Ricky Puig gets an assist, he gets a goal. Edwin Cerrillo gets a goal in that one and a banger goal. Marco Reus also gets an assist for the Ricky Puig goal. And so the midfield really turned it up. You got to see the offensive side of the midfield in the second half. And again, I think the midfield, once again, they played a little bit more defensively in the second half, while also still being a big presence in the offense. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, again, I mentioned Edwin Cerrillo. What a second half for him. What a just a turnaround for him. And he had a much bigger turnaround, I think, for compared to Jalen Neal. But it's like for him, he had a really rough first half. You kind of were questioning why was he in the game? Maybe you should have put Mark Delgado in, and then him on the bench, and then you had Royce and Puig. But again, it was like a lot of people were kind of questioning that. But then Cerrillo, again, a major turnaround. And it wasn't just the goal, right? It was just him, getting back into the game, trying to help his team no matter what. And again, in that second goal, that really helped him out. And for him to score his first goal with the Galaxy, in that game, for him, that being his first goal with the team, and in a game like El Trafico, boy, like, I mean, what a way to score your first goal for the team, right? Like, I mean, that's going to be a goal to remember for sure, for Edwin Cerrillo. But yeah, I mean, obviously he played a lot better. I think, again, the little things helped this team. Same thing with Marco Reus. I think he, ended up becoming a little bit of a threat because, that's the thing with Marco Reus when we brought him in, it's like, now you add another offensive piece into the offense. Now, not only are you focusing on Ricky Puig, you're also focusing on Gabriel Peck, you're focusing on Dejan Joveljic, you're focusing on Diego Fagundes. Like, there's a bunch of guys you got to focus on, with the Galaxy offense. And yeah, LAFC did have a good, understood that in the first half. But then once the second half was going on and they were getting the opportunities, finding the spaces, it was hard for the LAFC team to really get everybody. And that's where I think really changed the tide, because you look at some of the goals, you look at the Edwin Cerrillo goal too, it's like, open space for him to take that shot. If that space wasn't there, he probably wouldn't have scored that goal maybe. Dejan Joveljic in the first goal, finding the space to take the shot. And again, what a great goal by Dejan Joveljic. He might be back. But again, we'll talk about that in the offense. But still, though, he finds a space for that goal, and then the second goal as well, knowing to extend his leg to get the third goal. Marco Reus finding Ricky Puig to find the space for Ricky Puig to find the space to take that shot as well. Honestly, he even created that space. Like, I mean, the curve on that goal was just insane for Ricky Puig. So, like, for everybody to find the space, to find the lanes, to find, everything to get the, I guess the offense going, it's just something that we needed. And so, obviously this is the midfield. I kind of talked a little bit about the offense, but still though, yeah, like, I mean, the midfield had a great game, or not necessarily a great game, but a great second half for sure. Just like everybody had a great second half. So yeah, I mean, obviously good for them, and honestly good for the midfield to really bounce back in that second half as well. Now let's go into the offense. You had Diego Fagundes in this one. No Joseph Paint still available because of a yellow card accumulation, which, by the way, also Edwin Cerrillo won't be available for Portland, unfortunately, because of the yellow card accumulation. But still, though, just to add that in there. But yeah, no Joseph Paint still for this one. Was suspended. You had Dejan Joveljic starting once again, which again was going to be make or break going into this game. Is how well was Dejan going to play? How much production was he going to have? How much involvement was he going to have in this game? And boy, was he involved in this game. But yeah, Dejan Joveljic was available in this game, started in this game, and then you had Gabriel Peck on the other side. Again, first half wasn't the greatest. I will say for the offense, they were trying to find their mojo in the first half. I mean, again, they had the opportunities, they were getting the opportunities, and were slowly building into the game, but they weren't clinical. They weren't clinical in the first half. Gabriel Peck had a lot of opportunities to really get the first goal in. He didn't get the first goal. I know Diego Fagundes had an opportunity in that game as well to get the first goal. Dejan Joveljic was kind of struggling in the first half to find those spaces to really get in there, to possibly get the first goal as well. And so I think, the opportunities were there. We were slowly building in there, but we just weren't clinical. We weren't finishing. And that's where, again, going into the second half, I was like, I don't know if we can come back because, we're getting the opportunities, but we're just not finishing. It's like, well, if we were to finish, maybe we'd be able to come back. And then obviously in the second half, they were much more clinical. They were finishing those chances. getting those 4 goals. And again, you look at Dejan, who was the bright spot on the offense, getting a brace. I mean, again, he might be back. He might be back and might be able to, we might be, if Dejan is able to play like he played in that game, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to be in a good spot. But of course, Dejan needs to, produce. He needs to keep that up. Of course, now I believe he has 14 goals on the season, which is, again, pretty good, despite the fact that he's lost a lot of time due to injury. So it's like, could you imagine what he would have been like if he wasn't injured? So, that puts you in a good perspective. But Dejan getting a brace, able to produce in this game. And again, the first goal was very, I guess, beginning Dejan for the Galaxy, right? Like the 2021, 2022 Dejan Joveljic, where he was sort of creating things out of nothing. That was kind of the first goal. And I think, again, Dejan, if he's able to play like that, again, going to be great for the Galaxy. Yeah, but I mean, Diego Fagundes had some opportunities. Maybe wasn't the best, but, still was involved in the offense. Gabriel Peck, again, getting the effort, getting the time, to create some chances. Unfortunately, he wasn't too clinical in this game, but still, though, was very much involved in the offense and still was trying to get the team back into it. And, again, when you look at the offense and just in general for for the Galaxy, there's a point where a team, and I think LAFC at one point, you're going to have to try to find a minimize Dejan Joveljic. You're going to have to find ways to contain Diego Fagundes. You're going to have to find ways to contain Peck and Puig and Royce. There's a lot of things that, a team has to figure out. It's like, how are we going to contain all these guys at once? And that's a very hard thing to do. And clearly you saw in the second half where LAFC were struggling to really contain all those guys. And that's where, again, could have possibly been the tide for the Galaxy. And again, for the defense to minimize LAFC in the second half, to be a lot more tighter in the defense. And again, everything that they needed to do, the little things that they needed to do, went a big way for this team. And that ultimately resulted into the 3 points. So, yeah, obviously offensively we were doing, we did wonders in the second half, getting those 4 goals, really turning the tide. And yeah, an El Trafico that I don't think a lot of people forget. It's one to remember, for sure. Definitely one to remember in terms of the history of this derby and derby and, for years to come. So I think this was going to be one that we won't forget. Management and subs-wise, trying to think about who went into the game. I know, obviously, Miguel Berry went in at one point when took off Joveljic. I believe we took off Fagundes, put in Gaston Brugman in there, which again was, I think the subs were correct. I think the subs were the subs that you needed to make. I think management wise, I don't know, because it could have been Greg Vanney. You could say that, Greg Vanney did play a big part into the comeback as well. I don't know if a lot of people are feeling the same way, but obviously as a coach, to rally the guys like that, what could have happened in the locker room, right? After that first half, what did Greg Vanney say into that second half to really lead the boys to getting into the comeback, to getting into the position to go win that game? You gotta give credit to the coach for managing to, again, making those little decisions and hopefully a good speech in that second half to rally the boys and get them going. And again, that's a big part. So it took everybody, right? It took everybody, took the players, took the coaching staff, took the fans as well. To give their support in that game. And honestly, again, just night and day in terms of the first half and second half for everybody in that stadium. And just getting the result and getting those 3 points. Again, this was a game where you needed to get those 3 points. A game where it could decide a lot for the rest of the season, for sure. But yeah, obviously, again, night and day in terms of that. So in terms of the players, in terms of how they performed, and so yeah, obviously, again, final thoughts on the game. Great win, great comeback win, a much needed win for the Galaxy. Taking on this 2 game week going into Portland. So that's another thing as well. As much as we want to celebrate, as much as we want to keep talking about this game, we got to put it past behind us and focus on Portland, because it's a quick turnaround. It's a quick turnaround for the boys, and it's a quick turnaround for the team. And they got 2 tough opponents in Portland and Vancouver going in this week. So obviously, they got to ride off the momentum, build off with the momentum, and hopefully they get on the right track, have the right mindset, right? But hopefully that's, what this game does for the Galaxy is getting them in the right headspace, getting them in the right spot mentally so they can get the top of the West, so they can, put the knock on the, put the nail in the coffin for really getting that and getting that first place spot, because obviously it's great to have home field advantage in the playoffs, because that is so much that's good. That's going to go a long way for the Galaxy, especially with how they've been playing at home. So they got to get that home field advantage. And also, speaking of this win, actually, and playoffs, with this win, we are officially in the playoffs. The Galaxy clinch into the MLS Cup playoffs. So we are in. We are in the dance. Now it's the matter of where we're going to sit at in the table. Do we get a home game or not? And obviously, that's what the boys got to work on. And that's, the work is job's not finished, right? Job's not finished. They got to go in there and really secure that, first in the West, get home field advantage in the playoffs. And also, if you get the first in the West, you're in CONCACAF Champions Cup. So that's also another thing that the G's are playing for, right? That's another thing the team is playing for. So there's still a lot at stake. There's still a lot of work to be done for the Galaxy. So they got to get, they still got to get the results. They still got to go win out games because, they still got to do it, right? It's not, that first spot isn't clinched yet, although we are in the playoffs, although we are in the dance. Now we got to focus on where we are going into the playoffs. So that's the next step for this team. And again, first place can go a long way. So, hopefully that'll, hopefully mentally and, we ride the momentum going into these next two games. So, yeah. But anyways, that was LAFC. That was the El Trafico 4-2 win. Great comeback from the team. Now we move forward. But before we go into the two preview games, obviously we got to talk about, we also got to talk about Ventura County and some Galaxy updates, I guess. I mean, there wasn't really any much Galaxy updates. I know there was rumors that, I forget the team from Russia, with the Moscow team, was interested in Dejan Jovalic. That wasn't something that we didn't really talk about. And obviously, since I didn't do an episode last week, couldn't really talk about it. But there was that happened. Obviously, that was interesting because, if you look at, a team being interested in Dejan is kind of interesting because now, obviously, we kind of talked about the striker position, and not only just for this season, going into next season, it could be a situation that we have to look at for the team. But still, though, it's something that I guess the team might have to look into into the offseason. We don't know. Obviously, Dejan Jovalic had a great game, so. And again, I think Dejan's still under contract, next season. So if Dejan Jovalic plays good and there are teams interested in him, that's going to be an interesting thing to think about if teams are going to be interested in Dejan and if he closes out the season well. So although there's going to be no movement, of course, the Galaxy aren't going to give up now because we need him. But still, though, like that was very interesting to hear from last week. But other than that, I don't think there was really much Galaxy news. And I mean, I could be forgetting something. But if I am forgetting something, it's probably, say it in the comments, I guess. But still, though, got to be more on top of that. Let's see. Ventura County updates. I believe the last time we talked about them was I believe we talked about them playing against the Houston Dynamo 2, which they ended up winning in penalties off that one. They also played, midweek before El Trafico, which was, against North Texas. They ended up losing 3-1 on that one. So that's a couple updates on Ventura County. They actually played against the Portland Timbers too. So not only is the Galaxy playing the Portland Timbers, but also Ventura County is playing against the Portland Timbers. So hopefully they do well there. I know they're in a good spot in terms of MLS Next Pro. In terms of the standings, I believe they're still in let's see where they're at. Oh, they're in sixth. I guess for the in MLS Next Pro. So still in the playoff position, I believe. So yeah, obviously they still got to focus on that. Hopefully they continue to go for Ventura County. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, actually, our special Olympic unified team, is that how you say it? I actually don't remember, but our Special Olympic team, I think it's just Special Olympic team. Special Olympic team for the Galaxy actually played in El Trafico. They ended up winning as well in that game. I forgot the score for that one, but I know they won as well. So shout out to the Special Olympic team for actually also winning and setting the tone for the weekend for the G's and for the first team, going into El Trafico. So shout out to them. Shout out to the Special Olympic team for winning, their El Trafico. So yeah, we end up getting a dub there too. So there you go. Good weekend for the G's, definitely for sure. Going into El Trafico week. So yeah, I think that is it for all the Galaxy news and for all the Ventura County updates. So there's really not much to talk about. So I guess we'll talk about our previews going into this week. First game, of course, Wednesday against the Portland Timbers at Portland. Last time we played Portland, we ended up beating them before the Leagues Cup. Joseph Paint still had a monster game. Well, not a monster game, but had a really good game against the Portland Timbers before going into Leagues Cup. So yeah, Portland right now in 8th place with a record of 11 wins, 10 losses, and 7 draws. So Portland right now, like I said, 8th place. So they're in a playoff position right now. They got 40 points. Minnesota behind them 39 points, and then you have FC Dallas with 34 points. So obviously there is a little bit of a spread in terms of those spots, but obviously Portland, they're not going to want to be in that wild card spot or in that playoff play-in spot. They're going to try to find their way to get into the dance automatically, right? So this is going to be an important game for Portland. It's going to be an important game for the Galaxy. Obviously, in terms of to lock up the number one or the first place in the Western Conference. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Portland is not an easy team to play against. Obviously, last time we played them, it was 3-2, and it wasn't. It was kind of a little bit of a back and forth game in that one. So yeah, I mean, obviously Portland right now, they're going to want to win this game. They're going to be at home. They got a great atmosphere. The Pacific Northwest hasn't really been, been that great for the LA Galaxy. Maybe a little bit more in Portland than in Seattle, but still though, it's a road game. It's a midweek game. We got to go play with what we got there. Got to go for the win. Got to go for some sort of result away, because obviously playing away in MLS, it's very difficult. And against a team like Portland who have really good pieces like Evander, like Cabecita, and just again, just the way they've been playing has also been good this season. And they're Portland's always going to be a team that's gonna be in there, be contending for the playoffs, and honestly even sneak their way into an MLS Cup final run, right? So it's just like Portland's always going to be there. And so, we always got to find a way to beat Portland. And again, those games can go up in the air sometimes and how we go against Portland, but it's going to be difficult. Like we mentioned before, no Edwin Cerrillo in this game. So now you got to decide who goes into the game. Do we put in Gaston Brugman in there? Do we keep Marco Royce in there? Do we take Mark Delgado? Do we put Mark Delgado in there, or does he come off? Like, it's going to be interesting how they go within that midfield, because Edwin Cerrillo has been starting. He has been technically the starter now. So now it's the matter of what are the Galaxy going to do there? Obviously, it's going to be on turf. So it's like, do you want to put in Brugman in there, a guy who's coming off an injury? How is Marco Royce going to adapt into the turf? Because I don't think he's played on turf yet. Now that I think about it, because obviously he played. His debut was with us and at home. St. Louis has has natural grass, and then they played back home here for El Trafico. So this is going to be his first time on turf. How does Marco Royce react to turf? Because obviously in Europe they're not accustomed to turf. So yeah, definitely for sure it's going to be an interesting situation how they do in the midfield. And again, the midfield is going to be a big part of this Galaxy team, right? But still though, going to be a tough place to go play at up in Portland. So it's going to be one where we, I don't know if we can come out with a win in that one, but definitely for sure we still got to go out there and compete. Got to go for the win. But again, just get some sort of result on the road, which is going to be something that we need to do. If we want to keep the first place in the Western Conference, right? So not going to be easy going up against Portland midweek. Obviously, quick turnaround from El Trafico. So now the guys got to get focused and ready for the game, and we just got to go out there and do our best there, and try to get a result out of Portland for sure. So yeah, Portland Timbers this Wednesday. I believe the game is at 7:30. So yeah, got to be a game that we're gonna have to watch and obviously get some results there. But yeah, that was the first game for this week, and then the second game for this week is the Vancouver Whitecaps. Right? Yeah, Vancouver Whitecaps at home. Last time we played Vancouver, we had also beaten them. Man, I don't even remember. That was so early on in the season that I don't even remember how much we beat them by. But it was very early on in the season. when we played Vancouver in Vancouver. Um, Let me just make sure what the score was so I don't look stupid. I'm already looking stupid right now, but um, boy, I cannot find this. Let's see, where are you at? Ah, Vancouver. Okay, so got it. Last time we played Vancouver in Vancouver, it was April 13th. We ended up winning 3-1 that game. Also the game, it was the game after the first El Trafico where we lost, so that was a big bounce back win for the team. Now we're going to Vancouver at home this time. Vancouver right now are currently in. I just had the standings. Vancouver are currently in sixth right now with a record of 13 wins, 8 losses and 6 draws. So again, Vancouver, another team that's also contending for playoffs and trying to move up into the playoffs position. Right now, they have 45 points. Ahead of them is Seattle with 46, and then Real Salt Lake and Colorado have 47. And obviously LAFC have 48 in second. So it still could be a toss up in that section of the standings. And also Houston have 44 behind them. Portland have 40. So it's like, Vancouver again, they're going to have to try to keep into the mix, they're going to be fighting for playoff position, and see where they land in the standings. Obviously, they're in a position where they can try to go get a home playoff spot as well. So going into LA and trying to be the Galaxy is going to be something that they're going to want to do, right? So, yeah, but again, home game. Obviously, we're still undefeated at Dignity Hill Sports Park. So like I always say, going into home games now, every team is going to want to go in there and be the first team to, beat the Galaxy at Dignity Hill Sports Park, right? So Vancouver's going to have that same mindset. They still got some good players on them, on their squad as well. And still, though, it's going to be a competitive match, not going to be an easy match. But in terms of the home games for the rest of the season, which is that one in Austin, the Galaxy got to get those wins, right? They got to win at home. They got to maximize those points at home. And if they don't maximize those points at home, that's where it can be a toss-up in whether, in our positioning. And I know I keep mentioning first place in the Western Conference, but that's what's at stake now, right? Like, that's what we're playing for now, is to be the top of the Western Conference. So, in terms of Vancouver, we got to play our game. We got to get 3 points, nothing less, in terms of that. So, we got to go get the win. We got to go, play Vancouver and just win that game. Again, they're also going to be a tough team to play as well. They're still trying to find a way to get into the playoffs and get a home field advantage in the playoffs. So for Vancouver, they're gonna do their best to get as many points as they can, right? So for the Galaxy, they got to defend their turf, they got to defend the home, got to defend the digs, and as for fans, we got to show up into the digs, we got to go support the team. And I'm pretty sure at this point, everybody's going to go support the team, right? The way we've been playing, the way that the Galaxy are right now, and the way what we're trying to play for. At this point, everybody is going to want to go play. Everybody's going to go support the Galaxy at this point, right? So, it's going to be a game that we need to go and get 3 points out of for sure. Portland again is going to be maybe the one where maybe a result might be okay, but definitely for sure, Vancouver has to be 3 points going into this week, and again, it's not going to be an easy one, but still, you got to get those 3 points against Vancouver. So I think for me, if we don't lose this week, I think obviously that's going to be a big, I guess a big positive, but also it's depending on how much points we get, right? I think if we tie both games, that's going to be pretty disappointing in terms for the Galaxy. If we lose at least one of them, I think that's also going to be a bit disappointing. But I mean, still though, we still got to go, play for what we need to play for. And I think again, with the El Trafico win, with the way that we played and we came back, I think it's going to be a big step for them mentally going in to chase that first place in the Western Conference. So obviously they're going to have that motivation, and hopefully they build off of that momentum, and they got to go get it. They got to go get that, right? So hopefully they do that as well. And just in general for the Galaxy, I think, just to kind of, I guess, close it out for, I think the Galaxy right now, and especially after this win, I know a lot of people kind of had questions about the team, especially after the St. Louis game. We were like, we should have won that game. Is this team really for real? And yeah, there's those moments where you kind of question that. But then when you look at the moments and you look at the performances that they did, and especially after that LAFC one, you just kind of know that there's some hope for this team, right? There's some hope for this team. So I think, again, it's like we just got to take it one game at a time, right? So obviously we got 2 games this week, quick turnarounds, and we just got to take it one game at a time. So, yeah, I mean, obviously we just got to go and do what we can do. Now El Trafico's behind us. We can build off the momentum off that game, but now it's the matter of who we play next, who we play, one game at a time, right? Just one game at a time. And just get the best results that we can. So yeah, going to be a pretty big week here. If we manage to, if best case scenario, we win both games, that's going to be pretty big for the Galaxy, right? But still though, regardless, we still, again, take it one game at a time. Can't be too confident going into this game. Still got some pretty tough opponents playing, this week. So hopefully, like I always say on this show, we can only hope for the best, right? So yeah, hopefully it's a good week, this one, but it's definitely going to be another important week for the G's. Before, I think after this, they go on break again, or is that after the Colorado game? I got to make sure on that one. It was either that one or after the Colorado one, but still though, they got to win. They got to get they got to do their job this week. So going to be a tough one, but still one where I think everybody's going to have the teams back, right? So, got to go support the team, got to show up for the team, right? So yeah, we'll see how that goes during this week. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for the episode. Got to manage to, get to an hour. So good on me for that one. But yeah, like I said early in the episode, hopefully Alex is back here next week or at least for the next episode after these 2 games. So obviously going to post this one, and then hopefully, after the Vancouver game, we can talk about Portland and Vancouver, and just have him here back again. Have, like I said, my partner in crime back in here, talk about it, because it does get a little bit lonely just talking about, just me talking here, right? And, it's good to have conversations with somebody else, and especially with someone like Alex, because a lot of times we agree on things, but there's those moments where we don't, right? And I think that's what kind of makes the podcast entertaining sometimes, right? And again, there's only one-sided opinion here, so, either some of you guys just agree with me or some of you guys completely don't agree with me, which is fine as well. Obviously, not everybody has their own opinions, right? But for sure though, obviously, hopefully he's back for the next episode, to talk about LA Galaxy, right? And hopefully it's a good week that we can talk about, right? And not a bad one. So, yeah, hopefully he's here back in the next episode. Obviously, we'll keep you guys updated on that. And, yeah, like I said, that's going to be it for the episode. Can't thank you guys enough. If you want to follow me at Insider Galaxy, follow me on Instagram, on X, go follow Alex, go follow LA Galaxy Central, on Instagram. And of course, before we go, I guess final thoughts, just, obviously thank you guys for supporting the show, keeping it real with me, being here, even though I'm just the only one in here. So, still thank you guys for, I guess, being here, supporting the show. If you're day one or if you're barely, listening to the show, whatever the case may be, thank you all for supporting no matter what. Yeah, just thank you guys for sure. Yeah. So I will say tip of the cap for you guys. I can't believe I managed to record, this episode with the cowboy hat on. It's fucking hilarious. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really take myself serious wearing this shit, but, but still, it's a nice hat, right? It's a nice hat. Hopefully y'all enjoyed me having the cowboy hat, the cowboy riding up in my saddle. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just being stupid here. And I guess for those who are just listening only on like Spotify or just the audio version of the episode, I am wearing a cowboy hat with an LA Galaxy logo on top. So for those who are just audio only, it's unfortunate that you can't see me with the with the hat on, but unless you're on Spotify, because I do actually upload the video version also on Spotify. So which, by the way, I know I've been lacking on the audio versions, a couple weeks. Sometimes I forget to post or I don't have time to post the audio version. So that's on me as well. But anyways, I'm dragging this way too long. This is supposed to be my outro and I'm dragging this way too long. So, but anyways, guys, thank you all for watching. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast, wherever, whenever you're listening to the podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week. And, yeah, let's go get it. Let's go get the best results that we can. Let's go chase that first place in the West. And hopefully next episode, it's a good week and it's a good episode to talk about. So yeah, and like I always say, we only hope for the best, right? So that's what we hope for. But anyways, thank you guys for watching and listening. Have a good day, have a good week, and yeah, thank you guys. Jesus.
7 words.